When the supply boat reached the tiny Lighthouse Island in 1912, everything was exactly where it should have been. The front gate was open. The oil lamps were still burning. The beds were neatly made. And the breakfast table was set for 3 men who never sat down to eat. There were no footprints leading away from the island. No signs of a storm. No rescue attempt. Just one diary entry left behind on the desk. Written only hours before the men vanished. The sea is calling again tonight. For over a century, no one has been able to explain what happened on that silent rock in the North Atlantic. Why 3 experienced lighthouse keepers disappeared at the same moment. Or how time on that island seemed to freeze the moment they were gone. Tonight, we go back to the island where time stopped. And nothing was ever found again. The sea has a strange way of keeping secrets. It doesn't bury them. It doesn't erase them. It simply folds them into its endless rhythm. And waits for the world to forget. But some stories refuse to drown. No matter how many waves pass over them. And one of those stories begins on a winter morning in December 1912. When a small relief boat approached a lonely island called Eilean Moor. An island so remote and so silent that even the wind seemed to think twice before crossing it. The men on that boat expected many things. A signal flag. The keepers waiting at the landing. Or at least the sound of human footsteps. What they didn't expect was nothing. Complete, unnatural, suffocating nothing. As the boat drifted closer, the crew noticed the first detail that didn't feel right. The island looked untouched. But not empty. There was no smoke from the kitchen. No movement near the cliffs. No boots crunching on gravel. And yet, something about the air felt disturbed. Like a room where someone had just whispered. And walked away. The 3 lighthouse keepers. James Duckett. Thomas Marshall. William MacArthur. Weren't just workers. They were chosen men. Resilient. Disciplined. Trained to stare down the ocean's worst moods. Without blinking. But when the landing party stepped onto the dock, the second strange detail arrived. The entrance gate was wide open. Not broken. Not damaged. Just open. As though someone had walked through it calmly. Without fear. And never returned to close it. One of the crew muttered under his breath. Men like them don't leave gates open. They walked toward the living quarters. The path was dry. Undisturbed. No deep boot prints in the mud. No drag marks. No signs of a struggle. It was as if the ground had forgotten everything. But inside the lighthouse, the silence felt heavier. Because everything was intact. The lamps were still burning. Small, tired flames hanging on to life. Fed by the last drops of oil. The beds were made. Not a wrinkle on the blankets. The kind of beds you prepare when expecting inspection. And the detail that chilled every man in that room. A meal sat untouched on the table. 3 plates. Bread sliced cleanly. Salted fish. Potatoes. And 3 mugs positioned perfectly. As if the men had stepped away only for a moment. But the chairs were pushed in. They never sat down. On the far wall, a clock ticked steadily. Its rhythm calm. Steady. And painfully normal. One of the rescuers, a seasoned seaman, later said in his written report, "It felt like walking into a room where time was still living. But the people were not." Then came the most unsettling discovery of all. The diary. Lighthouse keepers were required to report everything. Wind patterns. Wave height. Equipment issues. Ship sightings. But the last entries in the diary were not reports. They were emotions. December 12th. Strong wind. Sea rough. Marshal restless. December 13th. Storm continues. Strange sounds outside. Men uneasy. December 14th. The sea is louder today. Not like before. And then the last line. Written with a heavier hand. Almost a shake. The sea is calling again. The entry stopped there. No signature. No update. Just those 5 words. The men reading that line felt a slow coldness spread through the room. A coldness that didn't come from the winter air. Because the breakfast on the table was still warm. When the diary said the men were already afraid, something had happened between the writing of that line and the untouched plates. Something that made 3 trained lighthouse keepers leave everything exactly where it was and walk out into the unknown. Some believed it was a wave, a sudden swell, a freak accident. But that theory failed the moment they found one detail outside. Only one set of oil coats was missing. 2 heavy coats. Essential winter gear. Still hung on the hooks. No lighthouse keeper in December would step outside without one. Not voluntarily. Which meant one man left quickly. Too quickly. Without thinking. And the others followed him. Not for fresh air. But for something urgent. Something important enough to drag all 3 men out of that door. Investigators found more subtle signs. By the western cliff, the grass had been torn up. Ripped upward. Not sideways. Like someone had clutched the earth with their hands. Not to climb. Not to stop a fall. But almost as if bracing themselves against something. What bothered investigators most was that the marks didn't match panic. They looked deliberate. Controlled. Almost ritualistic. As if 3 men were standing there. With a purpose. Searching. Listening. Watching. And then, without a trace, they disappeared. No bodies washed ashore. No boots. No caps. No broken wood. Nothing. The ocean swallowed them. Without leaving a single clue behind. 2 weeks later, a government official concluded the case as lost to an act of God. A label used only when investigators had no evidence, no explanation, and no courage to look deeper. But on the mainland, the villagers said something else. They said the keepers never left the island. Not in the way people believe. They said the island was old. Older than maps. Older than the lighthouse. A place where strange things had been whispered. Long before the first stone was placed on the ground. Stories of lights appearing offshore. On nights without moon. Voices echoing against the rocks. And birds refusing to land there. Some called it superstition. Others called it memory. But the one story that everyone knew was this. The sea calls certain men. And those men always hear it. The diary's final line was no exaggeration. It wasn't poetic. It wasn't dramatic. It was a warning. A warning no one took seriously. Until the keepers vanished. That winter, the lighthouse continued to flash its steady beam across the ocean, as if nothing had happened. But the light was not a sign of safety anymore. It was a reminder. A wound carved into the fog. A silent monument to 3 men who stepped outside during breakfast and became ghosts. The sea was calm when the search vessel anchored beside the silent deck. calm in a way that didn't feel natural. As if the water itself was holding its breath. The crew of the rescue team used to say that the ocean talks to you if you spend enough time listening to it. But on that morning, the ocean wasn't talking. It was hiding something. They boarded in pairs, one group moving toward the bow, another toward the galley. From a distance, the ship looked normal. Functional. Alive. But the moment the boots hit the wood, the truth showed itself. There wasn't a single human sound left aboard. Not breathing. Not footsteps. Not even the faint groan of a man asleep in his bunk. Just wind. And wood. And something else, something faint. A slow, dragging sound from below deck. Like a rope swaying across the floor. Or something far heavier being pulled. At first, no one reacted. They assumed it was the ship shifting from waves. But then they realized the sea was flat. Perfectly still. One rescuer stopped walking. "Did anyone else hear that?" he whispered. No one answered. Because they all heard it. The sound stopped. And for a long moment, none of them knew whether to keep going or run straight back to their boat. But they didn't have time to decide. A sharp metallic clink echoed from the galley. Not loud. Just enough. They moved toward it. A pan lay on the floor, spinning slowly, as if someone had nudged it just seconds earlier. The stove was still warm. Eggs half-cooked. Coffee steaming. Everything frozen in the middle of breakfast. That's when the chief investigator noticed the bent fork. At first it looked like it had been dropped. Then he picked it up. Bent backwards. Bent in a way that metal doesn't bend without force. Bent in a way that human hands cannot naturally achieve. "What the hell happened here?" someone whispered. Then the chief found something else. 4 chairs pulled out. All facing the same spot in the middle of the galley floor. They weren't arranged by accident. They were placed there. Deliberately. Neatly. Almost ceremonially. One rescuer stepped backward without meaning to. He later admitted that the moment he saw those chairs, he felt like he was standing in a room where people had been praying to something that wasn't human. Something they saw. Something they feared. Something they couldn't stop. The galley felt wrong. But the hallway felt worse. The deeper they walked, the colder it became. Not normal cold. Not sea wind cold. A deep, metallic cold that hits your jaw and your teeth and sinks into your bones like winter air trapped inside metal. Then they reached the captain's cabin. The porthole was smeared with streaks. Finger marks. Long. Thin. Stretched. As if someone, or something, pressed both hands against the glass. And dragged them downward. The color of the streaks was what broke the lead investigator. Dull red. Not bright like blood. But old. Dirty. He touched it with his glove. The texture was gritty. Heavy. Sediment. Tests later showed it was iron oxide mixed with particles found only in deep-sea trenches. Layers below where sunlight has ever reached. Where pressure crushes submarines like paper. How something from that depth made its way onto a window 40 feet above water. No scientist, no diver, and no oceanographer has ever explained. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the writing on the captain's desk. A new page in the logbook. Fresh ink. Written between 4 o'clock and 4:02 a.m. Less than 10 minutes before the ship went quiet. The page read, "It's on the deck." 4 words. Followed by a sharp, downward streak in the ink. A line that looked like the pen had been yanked out of the writer's hand. The chief investigator stared at that streak for a long time. He didn't speak. He simply turned and walked toward the deck. The others followed. Outside, the sun was beginning to rise. But the light didn't make anything feel safer. Because scattered across the planks were footprints. Dozens. All bare. All wet. All from the crew. And all heading in the same direction. Toward the bow. But there was one thing wrong. The footprints never came back. Every last one of them led forward. And none led away. They vanished at the very edge of the ship. Right before the rail. As if the entire crew walked there. Stood facing the water. And then stepped off. The rescue team stood in silence, unsure what to make of it. One rescuer cupped his hands around his mouth and shouted into the water. Nothing came back. Another rescuer leaned over the edge. The sea should have reflected the sky. But the water below the bow was darker. A strange, deep blackness. Almost like a shadow. Moving beneath the surface. He stepped back. "Something's under us," he whispered. Before anyone could respond, a small item rolled from the far end of the deck. A metal ring. A wedding band. It spun slowly on the wood before settling. Inside was an engraving. "CE, find your way home." This ring belonged to Second Officer Charles Ettridge, a man known for never removing it, not even when sleeping. So if his ring was here, where was he? The chief investigator ordered a full search. They combed the ship end to end. Checking every bunk. Every corridor. Every hidden compartment. Nothing. Not a single body. Not a single sign of a struggle. Not equipment missing. Not a raft lowered into the water. Just a ship. Fully intact. Fully supplied. Fully abandoned. Except for the notebook. In Charles Ettridge's bunk lay a leather journal. Inside were sketches. Rough, frantic sketches. Of something rising from the water. A shape. A silhouette. A form too tall to be human. Too narrow to be machinery. Its arms were long. Unnaturally long. Its shoulders tapered. Its head was tilted forward like a creature without bones. There were multiple sketches, growing more chaotic. One of it climbing the rail. One of it on the deck. One of it standing behind the crew while they slept. And the last sketch. The last sketch shook the investigators. It showed the creature standing inches behind the captain. One hand reaching toward the logbook. The other toward the captain's shoulder. Under the drawing were 4 words. "It wants us all." The journal ended there. The final page was torn out. No one has ever found it. But the strangest part came when the investigator asked the ship's mechanic to check the engine room. He descended the metal stairway. And within 15 seconds, he came running back up. Face white. Hands shaking. He said, "There's something moving down there." The team descended together. Lights flickering. Shadows stretching across the pipes. The temperature dropped. A row of heavy tools lay scattered. But they weren't dropped. They were lined up. Organized. Arranged in a perfect circle. In the center of the circle was a puddle of water. But the water wasn't from the sea. It was warm. Warm like breath. Warm like blood. The chief touched the floor around it. Dry. Everything else was dry. Only the center was warm. Only the center felt alive. Then something dripped. A single drop. Landing near his shoe. He looked up. A handprint. A large handprint. Pressed on the engine room ceiling. Made of the same deep-sea sediment. Found on the captain's window. As if something massive, tall enough to reach the ceiling, was standing there, just before the crew vanished. But there was still more. The radio room door was locked from the inside. They had to break it open. Inside, the chair was overturned, the headphones still playing static. But layered deep beneath the static, a faint sound existed. A rhythmic tapping. Morse code. They recorded it, took it back to the mainland, and decoded it. It repeated one message. Move quickly. Don't turn around. They listened to it again and again, trying to understand. But no one ever could. Some said it was a warning from the crew. Others said it was something else entirely. Something mimicking human communication. But the search team never forgot one detail. The tapping wasn't on the radio equipment. It was recorded from inside the room. Which means whatever was sending the message was already in there. Already in the room with them. Already close. Too close. And that's when the chief investigator made the decision. The most controversial decision of his career. He ordered everyone off the ship. Immediately. No delays. No final sweep. The rescue team argued. Protocol demanded they document everything first. But the chief didn't budge. He told them one thing. This ship isn't empty. They left everything behind. Their tools. Their samples. Their reports. They got on the rescue craft, pulled away from the silent deck, and watched it shrink into the horizon. The ship floated peacefully, as if nothing had ever happened aboard. But then, just as the sun set, one of the rescuers looked back. He swore he saw a silhouette standing on the bow. Tall. Thin. Still. Watching them. He blinked. It was gone. But he never took it back. The official report called it light distortion. But the crew knew the truth. They all knew. The silent deck didn't lose its crew. Something took them. And whatever took them wasn't done. When the rescue team returned to shore, they expected questions, investigations, maybe even punishment for abandoning a ship without completing the protocol. But what they received was far stranger. Officials didn't ask what they saw. They didn't ask why the search ended early. They didn't even ask about the crew of the silent deck. Instead, they confiscated every recording, every note, every radio transcript, and quietly moved the survivors into a secluded debriefing room that felt less like an office and more like a quarantine chamber. The men were told not to speak of the incident. Not to the press. Not to their families. Not even to each other outside the building. One by one, they were interviewed by people who didn't introduce themselves, didn't write anything down, and didn't question the facts. They only repeated one thing: did it follow you? The rescuers didn't understand the question, not at first. But as the hours passed, they realized every interviewer asked it. Every time. Almost as if it was the only thing that mattered. Did it follow you? By the fourth hour, the chief investigator snapped. He slammed his fist on the metal table and demanded to know what the government already knew about the ship. The room went silent. The lights dimmed. And the lead officer, the only one wearing a military badge, said something that froze the chief's blood. That ship has appeared before. Not the name. Not the crew. The ship itself. The chief leaned forward. What do you mean, appeared? The man didn't blink. We found it in 1981. No crew. No bodies. No answers. The chief felt the world tilt under him. That's impossible. The silent deck was built in 1997. The officer stared at him, unfazed. We know. The implications hit everyone differently. Some refused to believe it. Others stayed quiet, replaying the memory of the warm puddle on the engine room floor, the handprint on the ceiling, the footprints leading off the edge. A ship disappearing and reappearing 2 decades apart, without a crew, without decay, without time passing normally, suddenly didn't seem impossible anymore. The officer continued speaking, voice low, calm, rehearsed. In 1981, we found it drifting near the Labrador Sea. Same layout. Same interior. Same warm stove. Same fresh food. Same disappearance. We logged it, tagged it, and tracked it for 26 hours. Then he paused, staring at the wall as if reliving it. On the second night, the ship vanished from radar. No wreckage. No distress call. Just gone. And now, 16 years later, it returned. The rescuers were released that evening, but with conditions: sign documents, stay silent, report any anomalies immediately. Most of them tried to return to normal life. Tried. But sleep didn't come easy. Every time they closed their eyes, they heard the tapping from inside the radio room. They saw the footprints leading to the ship's rail. They felt the invisible presence that followed them through every hallway of that vessel. Some of the rescuers started leaving lights on at night. Others developed an instinctive habit of checking behind doors before entering a room. The chief, however, struggled the most. He began sensing a shape in his peripheral vision, tall, thin, unmoving, whenever he walked down the hallway of his apartment. He told himself it was exhaustion, stress, trauma. But one night, as he stepped into his living room, he saw moisture on the floor. Not spilled water. Not condensation. Footprints. Bare. Wet. Leading from his front door, to the center of the room. And stopping just behind the chair he always sat in. The next morning, he packed a bag and checked into a hotel without explaining to anyone. The other rescuers had their own experiences. One reported that the sound of dripping water echoed from his ceiling every night, even though the building had no pipes above him. Another woke up to smell the ocean, salt, metal, and cold, inside his bedroom. One rescuer claimed he heard faint tapping on the wall beside his bed at 3:14 a.m., the same rhythm as the Morse code recording, "Move quickly. Don't turn around." Not a single one of them wanted to believe the worst. But deep down, they all knew. Something from that ship did follow them. Not physically, maybe. But in a way even worse. Meanwhile, officials sent a surveillance team to track the ship. But they didn't need to look far. The silent deck had drifted only 14 nautical miles south, barely moving, as if waiting. As if watching. As if knowing it would be found again. A new boarding team was assembled, this time armed with tools, cameras, radiation testers, pressure scanners, anything they could think of to confront something not fully natural. But the chief investigator begged them not to go aboard. He insisted the ship wasn't abandoned, it was hunting. They dismissed him. The second team boarded at sunrise. They never radioed back. A nearby Coast Guard antenna detected one faint signal, an automated emergency ping, and 30 seconds of scrambled audio. The technicians enhanced it, filtered it, slowed it down. In the background, they heard chaotic footsteps, a metal tray falling, someone screaming the word "run," and then, suddenly, silence. What came after the silence was worse than any human voice. A slow, wet dragging sound. Heavy. Measured. Rhythmic. Something moving across the floor. And then a single exhale. Not human. After that, everything cut to static. By the time surveillance aircraft reached the coordinates, the silent deck had vanished again. Days passed. Then weeks. Authorities tried to sweep the incident under the rug. They claimed the missing search team was lost in a storm. They claimed the rescuers were mistaken, traumatized, misinterpreting ordinary phenomena. But the rescuers knew better. They had seen things no storm could ever create. And every night, their fear grew heavier. Because whatever happened aboard that ship wasn't contained to the ocean anymore. It had crossed over. It had attached itself. And it wasn't letting go. One night, the chief sat alone in the hotel room. He hadn't slept more than an hour a day for nearly a week. His eyes were hollow, bloodshot, trembling. The room was dim except for a small lamp. He kept the curtains closed, the door locked, the chain latched. Yet the sense of being watched never left him. At 3:17 a.m., he heard something, soft at first, then unmistakable. 3 taps on the bathroom door. He froze. Breath stopped. Heart stilled. The taps came again. 3. Even. Cold. He stood up slowly, legs shaking, and stepped back toward the exit. He didn't want to open the door, every instinct in his body screamed not to. But the taps became louder. Closer. Almost impatient. Then, beneath the door, spreading across the tiles, a thin line of water seeped out. Not normal water. Dark. Thick. With sediment swirling inside. The same sediment found on the captain's window. The same sediment that doesn't exist anywhere near the surface. The chief ran. He didn't even close the door behind him. He sprinted into the hallway, barefoot, pounding on doors until hotel security arrived. When they entered the room minutes later, the floor was dry. The bathroom was empty. No water. No stains. No footprints. Nothing disturbed. Nothing touched. Like it never happened. But the chief knew. He knew it wasn't hallucination. He had seen the same sediment aboard the ship. He had seen the footprints. He had seen the sketches in the officer's journal. The long arms. The tapered shoulders. The slouched, unnatural posture. Something was following him. And it would not stop. He left town that night. Changed his number. Disappeared. Within a month, 4 of the rescuers quit their jobs. 1 moved inland, as far from the ocean as possible. 1 refused to sleep alone. Another boarded himself inside his house each night, blocking the door with furniture. But no matter how far they ran, the presence went with them. It didn't need water. It didn't need a ship. Wherever they went, it followed. A fisherman later claimed he saw the silent deck again drifting along the fog near Greenland. But when satellites scanned the region, the ship was gone. Another cargo pilot reported seeing a vessel with no crew, no lights, drifting through sea ice like a ghost. But again, nothing was found. And then, 1 year after the incident, a package arrived at the Coast Guard office. No sender address. No note. Inside was a single object. The missing final page of Charles Attridge's journal. The sketch was clearer, darker, more detailed than any from the other pages. This one didn't show the creature behind the captain. It showed the creature towering above the entire ship, its elongated limbs gripping the railings, its head lowered toward the deck. Its jaw, hinged too wide to be human, hung open as if inhaling the entire vessel. Below the drawing were 3 words, carved with something sharp. "IT follows them." Officials burned the page. They locked the case. They silenced the rescuers. But none of it changed the truth. The silent deck isn't a ship. It's a lure. A trap. A doorway. And once you step aboard, it doesn't matter if you leave. A part of it always leaves with you. And as we drift away from this story, one truth refuses to sink beneath the waves: some mysteries are not meant to be solved, only remembered. The oceans hold their secrets the way the night holds its shadows, quietly, patiently, forever. And as we drift away from this story, one truth refuses to sink beneath the waves: some mysteries are not meant to be solved, only remembered. The oceans hold their secrets the way the night holds its shadows, quietly, patiently, forever. The silent deck may never speak again. No logs recovered. No voices left behind. No final message carved into the hull. Just an empty ship, a cold breakfast, and a question that still echoes like a whisper trapped underwater. Where did they